northwards, so double figures across the south, and 7, 8, 9 degrees further north is above average for this time of year. So it's a mild start to the Christmas weekend, a windy one as well, staying mild for Christmas Day but turning colder for all of us by Boxing Day.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me at 11 on GB News for Headliners, in which I'll be joined by two of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late-night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Deebs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Steyn. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton Tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Lawrence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless and sometimes serious, much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and tune-in apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel. Hey, welcome along everybody to Thursday's edition of the Mark Steyn Show. With me, Patrick Christys. We have a stellar lineup of stories and guests for you today. You will not want to miss it. Big victory, massive victory, huge victory. We've got some great news for you because Councillor Dominic Beck has pulled out of the race to become Rother Valley MP. We've been very vocal over the last few weeks, questioning why the disgraced grooming gang scandal cabinet members have been allowed to run as MPs, going from making an absolute mess of their local area to potentially finding their way in Westminster as well. We'll be covering this with our very own Charlie Peters, who broke the news with us earlier today. That is a huge scout, by the way, people. Other news channels, they won't dare to touch it. We're all over it and we're getting results. Anyway, in other news, are we becoming the last resort for failed asylum claimants? A survey released today by Migration Watch shows that asylum granted in the UK has risen to 77%. We are a soft touch, we're like a blancmange, OK? Whilst France reduces theirs to 25%. Even the French have got more of a backbone than us, which really is saying something, because we all know their tanks only have one gear. And if our stats are correct, we estimate that the taxpayer could be shelling out £64,000 a year for each migrant. How many nurses is that? Hey, that's double the UK's median salary. Talking on this will be the former editor of The Sun and fan favourite. It's Kelvin Mackenzie. There you go. Anyway, there you go. Ceilings streaming with water. Zero heating. These are the experiences of families living in military accommodation provided by the Ministry of Defence. Now, we spoke yesterday about migrants prioritised over the UK's homeless children. It seems that they may also be prioritising them over our military personnel. Joining me on that will be the leader of the Social Democratic Party, William Clouston. Some news I bet that you weren't expecting as well, by the way. President Biden has released thousands of documents on the murder of US President John F. Kennedy in full for the first time. We will have Bob Mulholland, one of Joe Biden's long-term friends and members of the National Democratic Committee, on all of this later. Plus, is it ethical to pray inside an abortion exclusion zone? There's a much bigger picture there. It basically involves silent thought crime, which is frankly terrifying if you really think about where that might lead. We'll be talking to two priests. Yes, we've got priest versus priest, ladies and gents. On either side of this argument, we'll always bring you the stories that matter most. And, of course, the most important part of the show, where you get to give me a right good pummelling. gbviews@gbnews.uk. Get your questions coming in. That's all coming up. But first, it's the headlines with the wonderful Bethany Elsie.
Patrick, thank you. Good evening. I am Bethany Elsie in the GB newsroom. Ambulance workers from the union Unison have announced they will stage 2 further days of strike action in a dispute over pay. Thousands of staff from 5 ambulance services in England will walk out on the 11th and 23rd of January. It will affect London, Yorkshire, the North West, North East and South West. Union leaders say the Health Secretary's refusal to discuss pay for ambulance workers and nurses has raised the prospect of even further strikes next month. But the Education Secretary, Gillian Keegan, says they must respect the independent pay review body.
You cannot have an independent pay review process which takes the politics out of pay and then have politicians intervening in that process. Not only does it blow the process up and destroy the process, but it also means what happens in future years. You know, is this going to be politicians now doing that? It's really important. It's been done by governments of different colours. The independent pay review process has been used pretty successfully, and that's what we want to continue.
Rail fares in England will rise by 5.9% in March. The government set the cap at a level well below inflation, with the Transport Secretary saying the intervention will help reduce the impact on passengers. It comes as rail workers get ready for more strike action, with RMT members in Scotland walking out on Christmas Eve until Tuesday morning. Air travel is also set to be affected, with around 250,000 passengers being warned of delays as Border Force staff strike from tomorrow. The Home Office says it's deported 42 Albanian migrants back home, which it said had no right to be in the UK. The government has come under increasing pressure to prevent migrants attempting to cross the English Channel from France. The Home Office said some of those involved arrived illegally via small boats, and others had been convicted of supplying Class A drugs. A controversial gender reform bill which aims to make it easier for young people to transition has been passed in the Scottish Parliament.
The Gender Recognition Reform Scotland Bill is passed.
86 MSPs voted in favour of the law, while 39 voted against. The bill will remove the need for a medical diagnosis of gender dysphoria in order to receive a recognition certificate. It will also lower the minimum age to 16 and reduce the time legally needed for applicants to live as their acquired gender from 2 years to 3 months. You're up to date on TV, online and DAB+ radio. This is GB News. Now let's get back to the Mark Steyn Show with Patrick.
OK, wonderful people. Now, normally at the top of the show, I do a monologue, deathless prose. You all know the drill by now. But today, we are ripping up the running order. Why? Well, because I have some news of a serious victory for the Mark Steyn Show, a serious victory for GB News as a channel. Grooming gangs are in every single major city in the UK. Tens of thousands of vulnerable, mostly working-class white girls have been raped and abused on an industrial scale by, mostly, British Pakistani men. Police forces, they don't do much about this. They don't want to stoke racial tensions now, do they? Entire political parties, they've ignored the issue. They tried to bury the issue. They wanted the demographic vote, didn't they? The mainstream media, they've largely ignored it. They didn't want the backlash. But GB News' Charlie Peters, he wasn't cowed by any of that guff. No, he's been investigating the grooming gang scandal relentlessly and shining a light into the darkest corners of society. Specifically, in Rotherham, more than 1,000 children were abused. That abuse included, and I'm warning you now, this is sensitive content, OK? That abuse included gang rape, forcing children to watch rape, dousing them with petrol and threatening to set them on fire, threatening to rape their mothers and younger sisters, as well as trafficking them to other towns. Despite this, though, the Labour Party council played down the scale of the abuse. And in fact, one of the cabinet members at the time was about to run as a Labour MP. But due to Charlie Peters' pressure, things have changed. And Charlie joins me now. Charlie, you've got a scalp.
Finally, it's extraordinary news. It's extraordinary news. Firstly, that Dominic Beck, this Labour councillor, was allowed to stand in the first place. I think it shames Rotherham Metropolitan Borough Council that they ever had him as a candidate. But also it shames Britain more generally. I mean, this is the most shocking story of the Elizabethan era in our country, I think. And it's scandalous that men like Beck, who had to resign after the council was in denial over refusing to admit the scale of the crisis, were ever allowed to approach public office. Now, Beck is the first man to fall in Rotherham from the GB News investigation, but I warned on your show, Patrick, 2 weeks ago that there are many more to come, and they will come. I'm going to take a break for Christmas now, but there are many more people in public office in Rotherham who will be having very nervous Christmases, knowing that GB News is coming knocking.
Yeah, indeed. And Charlie, there will be more heads to roll. I just want to say thank you. I know it's a bit short and sweet, this. I just want to say thank you, really, for that, and to break that news here on this show. Mark Steyn is very passionate about this issue. I'm very passionate about this issue. And you have been banging the drum for this relentlessly. And as you've said, Charlie, there is more to come, is there not? What can we expect here on this channel?
Well, I'm not going to break my next scoop because I don't want to let those who are in the firing line get ahead of it. But I can reassure our viewers and those who've been supporting the channel and indeed this investigation that more councillors are in the firing line, more members not only in Rotherham but also in Telford, in Rochdale and further ahead. Much of the mainstream media, as you said, has looked away from this story, but we haven't. The things we've discovered are...
And Charlie, I think a lot of people find it absolutely, utterly remarkable that this guy was even anywhere near a candidates list to be a Labour MP. The Labour Party, it would appear, yet again, just not getting it at all when it comes to grooming gangs in this country.
Yes, I mean, completely blind. And many people, when we broke the story 2 weeks ago, they were asking how on earth did Dominic Beck become a candidate in the first place?
Do you think it's because they don't care, Charlie, or not? Sorry, do you think it's just because they don't get it, or they don't care, they don't see it as a problem, they don't want the harassment?
Well, the strategy for Labour has always been stay silent and hope the world moves on. But lots of people have refused to stay silent. Lots of survivors in the town, in Rotherham in particular, have been speaking to me day in, day out for the last year, giving me the inside scoop on what's going on there. And we learnt this week, of course, that Councillor Emma Hoddinott, who was the deputy leader of the council's cabinet when Beck had to resign in 2015, when the council was found to be in denial and wholly unacceptable, she was on the selection committee that picked him. Yeah, so it's people who are all caught up in the scandal, working together, colluding to bring themselves back into power. It's scandalous.
You couldn't make it up, actually. You really, really couldn't make it up. Charlie, thank you very much. Charlie Peters there, who's been doing absolutely stellar stuff, and that is the news that broke just moments before we came on air. GB News, well, Charlie Peters, really, getting a proper scalp in this investigation, the first of many. As he said, a lot of people out there right now, potential Labour politicians, one would have thought, will not be having a particularly easy time of it over Christmas, and nor should they, because I'll tell you who absolutely doesn't have an easy time of it, the poor victims of grooming gangs right across the country. But let's just move on from that now, because can you believe that migrant acceptance rates in the UK have risen to a whopping 77%? Seriously? Statistics revealed today by Migration Watch say the Home Office has seen grant rates for asylum rise by 43% over the last 7 years. So in the last 7 years, this is all, well, not all of it, nearly all of it, post-Brexit stuff, isn't it? It's gone up by 43%. Considering France's grant rates have actually lowered, are we now becoming the last resort for failed asylum claimants? Last Chance Saloon. Former editor of The Sun, Kelvin Mackenzie joins me right now. Kelvin, what's going on?
Well, what's going on is that everybody coming from the Middle East or Africa have worked out you've got more chance of getting into the UK than you have in France. For instance, France wants to maintain good relations with Iran for commercial reasons. Therefore, they reject migrants. So those migrants say, righto, Squire, thank you very much. Let me try the UK, where once I get into the UK, I'm laughing. We have a really serious issue in our country, and it's one that no political party is going to solve. Have you heard Starmer say anything? Surely Starmer should be outraged at these numbers of 77%.
Yeah, because the workers would... These are jobs that, normal, ordinary working Brits could take.
And housing.
Yeah.
And education. And, probably more importantly, health. So and why has it taken an independent organisation like Migration Watch to come out with these numbers? These numbers have been available since September. Why is it that the Home Office haven't issued it? Really? Have you heard the explanation of why this has happened at all? Have you seen the official? Right. I urge you. I can't even remember it because it doesn't make enough sense. The Home Office have issued a statement explaining why this number has happened. I defy anybody to read that statement, right? Just go online and find it, right? And say, oh, that's the reason, is it? There is no good reason.
No, there's no good reason.
Right, and the other thing to work out is this one. You think 77% is a lot. 98% of Eritreans... Syrians and Afghans.
Because now we have, if you really look at it that way, basically an open border with Afghanistan, Syria and Eritrea. Two of those countries we've essentially been at war with. One of them we definitely have. The other one, well, in terms of ISIS, we absolutely have. So we left the European Union. We didn't fancy having an open border with France, Spain, Portugal, but we have now got an open border with two massive jihadi hotspots.
So what is... So any time I listen to Braverman, I'm sure she's got good intention.
Yeah.
Patel, a very bright woman, good intentions. The current Prime Minister, they all say, we are determined, right? Do you remember these expressions?
Sick of it.
We are determined to solve this issue. And the answer is, years and years go by and nobody solves it.
Well, it gets worse.
Not only gets worse. So you are Starmer. You're sitting there, you're thinking to yourself, right, well, this problem is going to be mine, by the looks of things, within 18 months, 2 years. So here's my big idea. And what's the big idea? Exactly. There is no big idea.
Do nothing, because he wouldn't want to give anything away at the minute. This is the other thing, because even if he does have an idea, which, by the way, he almost definitely doesn't, he's not going to want to give it to the Tories right now and say, why don't you do this? And the Tories can claim it as a win. He's probably calculating that it can't get much worse. But one of the big concerns for me, apart from literally all of it, is it's not enough now for people to go, well, my local area is changing massively. That hotel that happens to be near a nursery school and an old people's home is now full of blokes and we don't know where they are or any of this stuff. That's not enough. What about the fact I can't get a GP's appointment for love nor money? No, that's not enough at all. What about the actual cost? When you work out, we've got people going on strike, right, at the moment in this country because they want, a 9% pay rise, 19% pay rise, whatever. But we're happy to pay £67,000 a year per migrant in the UK, per channel migrant.
For a number that is literally going up by the hundreds every day.
Yeah.
It's not as though, it's capped off there, we'll be all right, the maximum is going to be $1 billion, it's going to be $2 billion, it's going to be $3 billion. There is no end to this. And so, look, we employ politicians, we pay them, we give them plenty of places to stand up on soapboxes and tell us what they're going to do. Why is it we keep asking?
You know what should happen?
What?
Every single MP in this country should have to have every single one of their spare rooms filled by someone who's just come over the channel. And that'd get the problem sorted, wouldn't it?
That, by the way, was the Patrick Christie.
It would.
Well, yeah.
It would.
Look, it's a fun idea anyway. Round Starmer's place, round Islington.
Lob him in Islington.
But knock on the door.
Yeah.
Hello, Mohammed. How can I help you? What do you mean, help me? I've got your third bedroom.
Exactly. There you go. You see, I think seriously, it's a way of doing it. Actually taking it direct to political masses. I mean, in Scotland, apparently they're not particularly keen on actually having any of these people who are coming across the channel, which I find utterly, utterly remarkable. But yeah, I mean, I don't see one because nothing else is going to be done about it, is it?
Right. But But why is it that the most important... This is possibly a bigger political issue than even inflation. Why is it that nobody seems to be able to solve anything, and they're not prepared to be nasty? And what they don't understand, the politicians, is, were they nasty? There's a big prize. It's called winning the next election. And for the Conservative Party, they are completely...
Now, when you say nasty, what do you mean?
Well,
saying uncomfortable things, saying uncomfortable things like we have to sort that.
Supposing we went to the French and said, look, we believe that you're trying fairly hard, or the Belgians, you're trying fairly hard to catch these smugglers. We are going to, from now onwards, put our own... Supposing we were Israel, for instance, in relation to this, we're going to put our own people into that coast. And when we see anybody doing it, we're going to go for summary justice. We're just going to shoot them stone dead, right? We're going to see the smugglers.
These are the people smugglers.
The smugglers. We're just going to kill them. Now, the French would then say, we are at war.
I see you're fluent.
Yes, exactly. I got a GCSE in trying anyway. And I think we have to do something, quotes, as mad as that. If we try to go through the conventional, legal, straightforward, this is all politics route. If this were Israel, I guarantee to you they would have armed people across the border and sorting it out.
If the French allowed us to have our SAS snipers picking off human traffickers, and only human traffickers, that's important to say, on the beaches of Calais, to be fair, the problem will be solved relatively quickly. I mean, it's the nuclear option, but there you go. Maybe that's Keir Starmer's grand plan. He just doesn't want to give it to the Tories. Can you imagine? Keir Starmer wins the election, and for day one, it's him looking like one of those kind of African military coups with a load of people behind.
He'd be dressed like the Ukraine president.
Yeah, constantly. Yeah, like Zelensky. Anyway, right, Kelvin, thank you very much. I always enjoy our chats. Kelvin Mackenzie there, former editor of The Sun. Right, coming up, we will be discussing the MOD's dodgy military housing contracts with the leader of the SDP, William Clouston. There he is. And, get this, who killed JFK? We'll be discussing the newly released JFK files with longtime friend of President Joe Biden and a member of the California Democratic National Committee. It's Bob Mulholland. And can praying be illegal? We have two priests, Reverend William Pearson G and Reverend Michael Corran, to battle it out. We've gone priest on priest, people, OK? You won't get that on the BBC. You don't want to miss it. See you after the break.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents. Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. B, I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and tune-in apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today. I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory. Twice baked. Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Hey, welcome back, wonderful people. Right, now, GB News is the People's Channel, so let's hear what the people have to say. We asked you, are we spending too much on channel migrants? And John's been on. John says, of course we are. We need to adopt an approach similar to the EU in Greece, Hungary and Poland. We are accepting, John, far too many people, far more people than, frankly, the rest of the continent. I believe this is another Johnny, is it? That right? It says, if we weren't so xenophobic, we'd help them with a special app where they could choose the level of accommodation from the smugglers to a la carte menu before they arrive on a cruise ship equipped with swimming pool and happy hour. Well, hang on a second, Johnny. That's actually going to happen, mate. They're going to end up on a cruise ship, and it's remarkable, isn't it? Because you've got loads of people now who pay money, not people in society, you know, you, I, whatever, who, let's say you'd come down to London to visit or gone to a different area to visit, and you'd look up local hotels, and you'd pay money, not a small amount of money in a lot of cases, to stay in that hotel, whatever hotel that is. I mean, the Holiday Inn, for example, is being used for these places. And now all of a sudden we're being told it's against their human rights to stay there. Well, it wasn't against my human rights to stay in the Holiday Inn a couple of months ago, was it? And then you've got people who pay to go on cruises. They love cruises. People are addicted to cruises. I must say I've never been on one, but apparently people absolutely love them. And they go, oh, it'd be against their human rights, wouldn't it, to put them on a cruise ship? Why? I think it would be against their human rights when the Rod Stewart Tribute Act turns up and the buffet gets stuck into towards the end of the evening. Anyway, Titch has been on. Titch says, we have, we are, and we will forever. Well, that's bleak, Titch, but I suspect you're probably right there. This is in relation to whether or not we are actually paying too much money, the taxpayer paying too much money for channel migrants. Apparently, it's around £64,000 a year per migrant people, which is bonkers when you look at what the average salary in the UK is. Molly has been on, just time for one more now. After playing France, we should be sending them straight back. Molly, I actually did want to say when it was the England-France game, look, maybe we should play them and we should put a wager on it. Put a wager on it. We should be basically playing to see who gets to keep these people. But there we go. Right, OK, we raised a point a few days ago that the MOD had allowed military family accommodation to deteriorate to such an extent that sleeping bags were being issued to help families get through winter due to faulty heating. Videos uploaded by soldiers also flooded social media, showing leaking ceilings, broken windows and floor-to-ceiling mould, which I think we can all agree is absolutely shocking, which is apparently causing viral infections in children. All of this is occurring while our servicemen and women are being expected to cover for striking workers over Christmas. Earlier today, we spoke to former Royal Navy nuclear submarine commander Ryan Ramsey, and he had this to say. He says it's an absolute scandal, shockingly handled by Pinnacle and the MOD, who should have intervened way earlier. I lived in married quarters when I was commander, and the state of them then in 2008 wasn't great. So with little investment and poor management, it's absolutely unsurprising that here we are. That company mentioned by Commander Ryan Ramsey there, Pinnacle, whose boss earns a tidy £320,000 a year. 320 grand a year. I was going to say I'm not sure anyone deserves that. I think some people do, but I'm not sure it's this guy. Anyway, we're awarded a £144 million contract in March to sort out the military's housing issues. Well, after a bit of digging, it turns out that the company has not only completely failed to fulfil its very lucrative contract, but they also, get a load of this, people, have some Chinese connections. There you go. One of the directors of Pinnacle's parent company is a Chinese national based in China. He's named as a person of significant control, the only one, in fact, which means he has more than 25% of shares and or voting rights and the power to appoint the board of directors. Now, we're not suggesting explicitly that there's anything untoward going on here, of course not, but should it be government policy to be handing out defence contracts to Chinese-affiliated companies? We've got William Clouston here, leader of the Social Democratic Party, to talk about what the Tories and the MOD are getting wrong here and what the SDP would like to see done with the treatment of our servicemen and women. William, thank you very, very much. Great to have you on the show. Rather a long introduction there, but hey, better to get it all out. First and foremost, we are seriously letting down our armed forces personnel. They are living in squalid conditions and the government doesn't seem to care.
Yeah, this is a scandal, an absolute scandal. These are people who've served the country. There were some cases in the newspapers and online. A gentleman, William Matthews, who'd served in Afghanistan, Iraq and Bosnia, and he's been complaining for months, literally months, about the quality of his accommodation. Nothing gets done. And I'm afraid, Patrick, it's the same old story with the successive governments, Tory and Labour, outsourcing. They prefer to outsource than doing anything directly. And I just don't believe that this model works, this constant outsourcing of services and facilities. Originally, actually, in 96, when the largest part of the estate was basically hived off, the National Orders Office complained then, a few years later, that basically the MOD, the Tory government at the time, had made a loss that amounted to several billion selling the thing off. And now they can't even look after the accommodation properly. And families have been given, as you say, sleeping bags and instructed to sleep in their overcoats. It's a scandal.
No, it is, absolutely. But when you look at the kind of juxtaposition, I mean, I was just spoken there about the fact that we're allegedly paying £64,000 a year per migrant. Now, OK, fine, I wish it wasn't a binary choice, but it does appear to be, because we are going to have a situation in this country, are we not, where disused military barracks are being used to house migrants, people who've just come over the channel. Meanwhile, people who've actually served for Queen, now King and country, maybe have fallen on hard times, will be zipping up the sleeping bag on the pavement outside, and that's just not right.
No, it's right, and it sickens the public, this sort of thing, Patrick. I mean, people, there used to be a concept of contribution, right? You paid in and you got out. We looked after our own people. Now, as you say, you've got illegal migrants coming in and, the government's spending $6 million a day, $7 million a day on expensive accommodation in hotels. And those hotels are very warm. And we've got people, as you say, there's a major problem of homelessness among veterans. We, in our party, we have a policy to prioritise military veterans in housing anyway. But meanwhile, they can't even get the basics right. These are the basics, not having mold and damp. As you say, some of the kids, Matthew's own child, is in an unheated room, in a cot in an unheated room. And it's just totally unacceptable. Meanwhile, Pinnacle...
I'm just going to say, I'm just interrupting you, William, just quickly, because we're playing some pictures now, and I know we have a lot of listeners on radio, right? And what you've just seen there, I just want to talk people through it, is a ceiling that's completely caved in with water pouring through it. And that water is going from what appears to be the loft all the way down through the bedroom floor, down into the kitchen, down into the hallway. And I wish this was an isolated incident. But right now, we have a situation, William, where if you go away and serve king and country, your wife or husband, whatever, and kids may well be getting ill off the damp in the house that the military is providing you or the government is providing you. Meanwhile, I'm sorry, but it's the most obvious example, though. It is, right? You have people in four-star hotels who've just come across the channel.
It's a scandal. I mean, this is the problem. I've got family members, a number of family members that have been in married quarters accommodation. This is a couple of decades ago, and they used to be perfectly fine. And the problem is, Patrick, that the model is wrong. The government is obsessed with selling all of our assets off. As you say, many of these assets have been sold to foreign investors. The purpose then isn't actually looking after the assets and looking after the families that live in the houses. The prime purpose of these companies is to enrich their shareholders. And I think there's a major problem here. Direct service provision is far more efficient than subcontracting and outsourcing all of these things. It just doesn't work. It's a model which has failed.
Yeah, and just talk to me a bit about the problem with outsourcing it. I mean, I seem to remember one time it was almost a question as to whether or not we were going to be outsourcing various different nuclear plants to the Chinese. I mean, now it's our military accommodation as well. Why are we? I mean, the thing is, we know, right, that the Chinese government does not mean us well. I have gone on record and said I really seriously do not think that the Chinese government means the world particularly well, given certain things that have happened in recent years. And now here we have a situation where supposedly China or Chinese-run firms, which is perfectly within our rights to question where this money is going, right? Could well be in control of a lot of our military accommodation. Why are we doing this? What's wrong with giving it to Jones Homes or someone?
Well, because the people that govern us have no concept of national interest, Patrick. That's why. I gave a speech in 2019 describing the decision, the prospect that the 5G network would be sold off to Huawei. I said that was insane. I described it as insane. I think it's ludicrous. It's taken the Tories about 5 or 10 years to catch up with reality. I mean, we're not well governed, I'm afraid. Until you get a government that's prepared actually to put the country first and not sell everything off, not hive everything off. But housing is a disgrace anyway, just on a wider point. We've had the little child, 3-year-old child in Rochdale died as a result of mould on the walls. And again, the SDP, we've thought about this. We have a policy, basically, you have a housing MOT, effectively, a condition certificate. And if you don't have that certificate, you can't charge rent. And I think landlords would very rapidly realise that you cannot put people into substandard accommodation and take rent.
Yeah, can I just ask, because just before we move on to something else, but I'm keen to get your views on it, and we've kind of led the discussion in this way, actually, albeit accidentally, but do you feel as though we're just being eaten alive with absolute, complete and utter woke tosh? I mean, I can't help but feel, for example, today, right, I saw a couple of things, actually, around the Muswell Hill area in London, in North London. Nice area, lots of money, putting about in Muswell Hill. People done rather well for themselves in the Muswell Hill area. There's a primary school there which has got all of the flags of the World Cup playing nations, and next to the Saudi Arabian flag, they've put the trans and the gay pride flag. Now, forgive me, I don't remember the trans and the gay pride team actually rocking up at the World Cup, but there we go. And then just a bit down the road, there's a hotel that's been used to house asylum seekers. Now, those asylum seekers, channel migrants, are being relocated from there to a disused military barracks. Oh, the protests up in arms. I'm sorry, but is this just kind of like white, rich guilt?
A lot of these things, Patrick, just don't make any sense at all. A lot of the alliances that these ultra-progressives have are actually completely incompatible. My friend and SDP colleague Rod Liddle has once said that, yes, you can have the gay pride flag, whatever, but try and organise a gay pride rally in Ramallah, and see how that goes. I mean, honestly, I'm afraid until we start defending Western civilization and Britain and our own values and our own traditions, we won't get anywhere. But unfortunately, we're governed by people that are completely indifferent to these things.
William, thank you very much. Always an absolute pleasure. There's William Clouston there, of course, of the SDP. Right, what do you make of all that, ladies and gentlemen? I've got to tell you what, I've got an absolute load more coming your way, because coming up is the Battle of the Priests. We've gone priest versus priest. That's right. We'll be having a debate on free expression of religion. As a woman, and actually I must say, genuinely going to have to try to hold back how angry I am here. We have to be quite careful with the way we discuss it, because it's an ongoing case. But a woman faces prosecution after silently praying in her own head by an abortion clinic in Birmingham. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Talk about potentially policing just literally what's going on inside someone's head. Also, make sure that you get in touch, gbviews@gbnews.uk, on all of those issues that we talked about, because you can pummel Patrick very, very shortly. Don't go anywhere.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
There's a guy who went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me! And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back, everybody. I wish this next story wasn't true, but it is. A woman has been charged for breaching a public space protection order and is facing prosecution after praying in front of an abortion clinic in her head. We've seen other examples of this, like in October 2019, when the first person was arrested for publicly praying in front of an abortion clinic in violation of the UK's first buffer zone in Ealing, West London. Right, now, I'm not going to discuss the specifics of this case. It's prompted the discussion, though, generally, on whether or not it's ethical to pray inside buffer zones around an abortion clinic. Now, can I just say, before I introduce my next two guests as well, I'm not here to get into a massive, great big discussion about the morality or otherwise of abortion. I understand it's a very polarised issue. I'm just going to outline where I'm at on it now for the sake of clarity, right? I am a man. I will never have to confront that situation myself. Ever. It's not my body, personally, and I feel like, frankly, very lucky that I don't really have to get involved when it comes to the whole abortion side of things. So I'll just leave that to the woman's decision. So that's where I'm at on the issue. I've got no strong, massively strong views on it either way whatsoever, but I do think that people should be allowed to silently pray in their heads anywhere, really. Here to discuss this are two Anglican priests on either side of the offence, actually. We've gone priest versus priest. Reverend William Pearson G and Reverend Michael Corran. Thank you very much. Right, I'll start with you, Reverend William. Where are you on this? Do you think that people should be allowed to just pray in their heads anywhere about anything?
Well, I do. And had I read this story on April the 1st, I would have discounted it as an April Fool. The very thought of one being able to be prosecuted for silent prayer, for what you are thinking about in the privacy of your own head, is utterly ludicrous. And I cannot believe we are in this situation.
Reverend Reverend Michael, your views? I got my priest mixed up there for a second. Reverend Michael?
Yes, easily done. We're pretty much interchangeable. Prayer is the center of my life. I'm sure, as my colleague, I begin the day with it. I structure my life around prayer as a priest and as a Christian. I have a huge regard for prayer, and know you can pray anywhere. God is quite big and powerful, and so I don't have to be next to someone to actually pray for them. Maybe if someone is terribly ill or dying by their bed. But there's a context here, and let's be adult about this. People pray very close to abortion clinics because generally they want the person walking into the abortion clinic to know what is going on. Now, I'm not saying that there was any violence involved. I think this has been a heavy-handed response. I think that maybe the person should have been told this isn't appropriate. But you can pray anywhere. If you're opposed to abortion, I wish abortion numbers would decline, but I'm pro-choice. But if you're opposed to it, pray about it. Pray 24 hours a day if you want to. But a woman has a right to walk it. Well, I think a woman has a right to walk, often a vulnerable, young, frightened woman, alone, perhaps, has a right to walk into an abortion clinic and get medical procedure without anything that she regards as intimidation. And women who walk in have said repeatedly, I do regard this as intimidation. They're the people we should be listening to.
Reverend Michael, I'll come back to you. I'm going to go back to Reverend William on this one. My concern with this would be that it's an incredibly slippery slope. Now, this is a specific issue involving a specific case, and I get that this is going to have to go through various different court processes or whatever. So, you know, I don't want to comment too much on the absolute out-and-out specifics of it, but I'd be concerned that someone could just change the rules and all of... You're being policed for what may or may not be happening in your head, Reverend William.
I couldn't agree more with you. This is the start of a very slippery slope, in my opinion. The legislation was brought in, these public protection orders or whatever they're called, were brought in not for this reason, but they are being now extended to create these buffer zones specifically around abortion clinics. And one wonders what is next. You know, would my colleague think it would be inappropriate for me to stand outside the Houses of Parliament and pray silently, perhaps with other people? Some politicians might find that intimidating. But this is a right. This is my human right. This is my right as a Christian, is to pray wherever I want to pray, particularly if it's silent. I would actually agree with my colleague that I don't think that it's very loving having noisy placard-waving protests outside abortion clinics. But to stop me praying in silence, I think we are entering a dystopian 1984 Orwellian situation here.
Reverend Michael, that's an interesting point that Reverend William made there, which is about the idea of, you know, let's say I was desperate for us to not rejoin the European Union, right? And I'm outside Parliament and I'm praying silently in my head and an MP walks past and feels intimidated. Well, can I get nicked for that?
You know, the problem with the slippery slope argument is that a lot of the time it's just paranoia. I mean, there may be a slippery slope. I think in some areas right now we're observing where that may have been an issue. But why would this happen? I'm in Canada now. Now, we've had bubble zones in Canada around abortion clinics for the longest time, partly because there were noisy demonstrations. There was also violence, which hasn't really occurred in the UK. But it's worked, and people do stand outside the bubble zone, and they pray, and they protest as well, and they have a perfect right to. But no, I think common sense has to apply. Look, you have competing rights here, and it's always in the freedom of my fist stops at your nose. Different freedoms exist, and they do collide in a free society. And we can, in a mature way, say, yes, you know, you're allowed to say no. You're allowed to protest, and certainly you're allowed to pray. But the point about prayer, it's so precious and so profound because it does work anywhere. You have to ask, why are these people praying right outside the abortion clinic? And how would you as a woman, a young woman, feel if you saw that person praying? Would you feel in any way intimidated?
Look, I understand that. Now, Reverend William, I can't help but feel as though if this was another religion, I don't think a lot of action would be taken. And I look back at things like the Batley Grammar School thing with blasphemy, etc., etc., etc. I'm sorry, but I don't see this kind of thing taking place if another form of prayer had been dished out. I mean, your views on that? Do you think that Christians are a bit of a soft touch? We tend to go quietly.
Christians are undoubtedly a soft touch. And I think if it was people of other faith, in particular Muslims, praying, I suspect this woman would not have been arrested. We're always a soft touch because we follow Christ's teachings and we turn the other cheek. We love our enemies, and go the extra mile. But I'd like to, challenge what's been going on in Canada. I mean, it's a classic liberal place, which has shown itself with the reaction to all the COVID protests and the trucker protests as being one of the most illiberal states in the world.
That's absolute I'm sorry, sir.
Do
you live in Canada? Do you live in Canada?
No, but
Have you
I've
been to
read
Canada?
the news with great
You've read
disappointment and
I've
sadness.
lived here for 35 years, and I have to tell you, please grasp reality. This is still a very liberal, tolerant country. Also, point of information, you're simply wrong. Orthodox Jews have been challenged, arrested in parts of North America for praying outside abortion clinics. Yes, I think there's a double standard. I would agree with you. Certain protests by radical Muslims have been treated with incredible sensitivity that Christians would not be given. I agree with you on that. But it's like comparing a color with a shape. This is not the issue. The issue is young, vulnerable women being allowed to go into an abortion clinic should be able to enter that without any form of intimidation. I would have thought as Christians who believe in love and empathy and inclusion, we can say, yes, you know what, do pray, but just outside the bubbles and give that person that dignity.
And we
to
love
walk in
the
there.
unborn child. We love the unborn child as well.
See, now we
just
get
as
down
God
to it.
loves
What it
them,
really is,
and He cares about them deeply.
You're opposed to abortion, thus you're prepared to bend the law. I think that's what it comes down to.
Final word to you on that, to come back on that, Reverend William. You're opposed to abortion, therefore you're willing to bend the law. I think that was what Reverend Michael said. Your views?
Pretty much.
That's not at all. But some laws are ridiculous, and this one is in particular.
All right. But look, I've got to, chaps, I could do this all night. Thank you very much. I'm going to have to go. No, I really appreciate both of you coming on, and I know a lot of people will have found that incredibly, incredibly enlightening. I certainly did. Wonderful stuff. I'm not sure you're ever going to shake hands and agree at the end of it. Well, you might shake hands, actually. There you go.
I'd shake hands. I'd hug him. I'm a Christian.
Yeah, oh, you hug him. Hey, there you go. Good. A Canadian Christian as well. Definitely hug him. Right, Reverend William G and Reverend Michael Corrin. Fantastic stuff. Hey, there you go, ladies and gentlemen. Right, OK, well... bit of priest on priest, eh? There we are. Right, ladies and gentlemen. Well, we're moving on from that now. And as they say, time for something completely different. So, when we come back, we're going to be... well, you know what? Sometimes I'm accused of hyperbole here. Sometimes I'm accused of saying, going a bit too far and maybe overstepping the mark. But when we come back after this break, we're going to reveal who killed JFK.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Steyn. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Dubes & Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Dubes & Kerr.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Welcome back, everybody. Now, nearly 60 years ago was the moment that US President John F. Kennedy was shot in Dallas, Texas, in what was perhaps the most shocking event in US politics of the 20th century, arguably one of the most shocking events of history, actually, really. Well, just last week, the US National Archives released 13,000 new documents relating to the official investigation. And one thing for sure is that the story remains as curious as ever, and fewer people seem to be accepting the official account of events. With me now is broadcaster and campaigner Leilani Dowding. Leilani, thank you very much. Now, I was concerned, as I think you were, that this wasn't getting enough press attention, so we thought we'd bring it to their attention. Who killed JFK, Leilani?
Well, absolutely, and you know, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. just tweeted out that's the nephew of him. Tweeted out that the most courageous newscast in 60 years, the CIA's murder of my uncle, was a successful coup d'etat from which our democracy has never recovered. So that was on Tucker Carlson in America. We haven't really heard much about it in the UK here, but obviously, me being the so-called conspiracy theorist, never ever believed for a moment that the official story was right. And now we're seeing a lot of evidence that, you know, that it wasn't, that there is another.
Well, obviously, one of JFK's surviving relatives is absolutely convinced that the CIA did this, isn't he?
Yes, yeah, no, exactly. He said it there in the tweet. And I think a lot of people no longer believe the official narrative because we've seen so much of this happening through everything. You know, we've just seen the Twitter files being released. I think they're up to number 8 now. And you can see the level to which the government and the CIA, the FBI get involved with things that a lot of people would think they would never get involved with. A lot of censorship of things, a lot of... sorry?
No, I was just saying, OK. I was agreeing with you. But on that note, I'm very, very sorry because I actually do have to go. Thank you very much for stepping in at short notice. I've got to get a move on, unfortunately. I've got to hand over to Dawn Neeson, who's in covering for Dan Woodson tonight. Leilani, thank you so much. We'll talk again very soon. Leilani Dowding there, who has just been referring to the latest CIA file drop, hasn't she? Right, OK, well, as Mr Steyn says... Well, firstly, actually, we wish him well, but as Mr Steyn says, stay safe, stay free.
Good evening, I'm Alex Deakin, and this is your latest weather update from the Met Office. A wet and windy spell of weather spreading northwards during tomorrow. Not great news if you're heading for the roads. Mostly it'll be dry during daylight hours across Scotland, where it'll be pretty chilly. But in the south, as well as being wet, there will be pretty mild conditions too. Weather fronts just trickling in here, made for a misty, murky day across much of the south. And that mist and low cloud just sticking around overnight. Quite foggy on some of the higher routes as well. Many places places dry until we see some heavier rain coming into the southwest by dawn. It's going to be very mild here, but colder conditions further north. Frost certainly across northern Scotland, and the showers coming in across Shetland will be turning to snow. But it'll be rain across the southwest. This will be quite heavy rain accompanied by gusty winds affecting Wales, the Midlands, southeast England during the morning. So just something to bear in mind if you are heading for the road. It's going to be very wet. That rain spreading steadily northwards into Northern Ireland, Northern England by early afternoon, and eventually into southern parts of Scotland. Further south, it turns drier and brighter through the afternoon, but still quite blustery and very mild, 13 degrees compared to just 2 or 3 in northern Scotland. Eventually that rain will hit the colder air across central and northern Scotland. Some snow likely on the hills during Friday evening. Showers will follow on behind, and the milder air will continue to push its way northwards. So it's pretty mild for the start of the Christmas weekend. Yes, there will be some snow on the hills across northern Scotland, but otherwise it'll be rain showers. Not too many of those across central and eastern parts of England. Saturday generally dry and bright, but it will be quite blustery, a gusty day on Christmas Eve. And as I said, that milder air is continuing to push northwards. So double figures across the south, and 7, 8, 9 degrees further north is above average for this time of year. So it's a mild start to the Christmas weekend, a windy one as well. Staying mild for Christmas Day, but turning colder for all of us by Boxing Day.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me at 11 on GB News for Headliners, in which I'll be joined by 2 of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Steyn. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison? I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton Tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Lawrence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless, and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and tune-in apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
No spin, no bias, no censorship. I'm Dawn Neeson in for Dan Wootton Tonight. Now, behind every door on the worst advent calendar in history, there's strikes, and more strikes. Not even a Christmas pudding to cheer us up. with 2 fresh ambulance walkouts coming in the new year too, yay. But is this and the past 12 months of economic and political chaos reason to abandon all hope? Or should we keep calm and carry on and make the most of our current first Christmas of freedom? My festive message of hope coming next in The Digest. Plus, are unions clutching at straws, get this one, by claiming government sexism is prolonging strike action? That's a new one even on me. I'll debate that at 10 p.m. with my superstar panel. By the way, we all hate that superstar thing. Christine Hamilton, Sean Bailey and Amy Nicol. Now, the Scottish Parliament erupted today after the SNP pushed through a seismic law, see the volcano link there, making it easier for people as young as 16 to change their sex.
And the Gender Recognition Reform Scotland Bill is passed. The next...
But with the Secretary of State for Scotland indicating he will try to block the bill, are Westminster and Holyrood about to go to war over gender? Former Olympian and women's rights activist Sharon Davis, what a girl, joins me to discuss Sturgeon's betrayal of women at 10:20. And as the Home Office returns 42 migrants to Albania, just several thousand to go, is Suella Braverman's plan to house illegal arrivals on disused cruise ships a happy compromise to prevent communities being overrun? Or is it still too appealing an option for people crossing that channel to get here? GB News star Nana Acquia analyses that at 9:50. After the Met chief refuses to investigate Jeremy Clarkson for hate speech over his controversial Meghan column,
not for the police to get involved in anything that's about, is something ethical, is it moral, is it proper, is it offensive?
are we finally seeing a return to common sense policing? You know, nicking crooks, that sort of thing. Social media sensation and self-professed even Chief Gammon, June Slater, joins me at 9:35. Plus, as Meghan backers, it's her again, who shrugged off racist attacks on Priti Patel and threats to Nigel Farage, are called out on their hypocrisy. Why is it OK to be offensive if